Welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast. My name is Scott. I'll be your host today. Got another great podcast for you today. Another great guest, another victorious guest in her fall goal race, her A goal race. We're going to bring her on in just a minute. As always, you can find this in the back episodes of our podcast at our website, ordinarymarathoner.com. Check it out if you get a chance. You can also find them at the aggregators, places like Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, of course. If you like the show, hit that subscribe button. Never miss a new episode that way. You can also find them now over at YouTube. We got our YouTube channel up and running. Posting all the podcasts over there in audio form, but it's like a YouTube video, but you don't get to watch nothing. You just get to listen to the podcast. But just another avenue for you guys to listen to us. We do have a few videos up there as well. Stephanie and I have been recording a trailer for her upcoming video series that will begin. It's probably going to begin in January, I think. Baby is, man, it is getting close, guys. We are under 2 weeks until the due date, and she is. She's looking ready. She's looking ready. No, she's ready for it to be over with at this point. But got car seats in. We got the nursery all set up. Everything is ready to go. We are just awaiting the arrival of Ordinary Baby, and that should be imminent at this point. So you can find me over at Twitter at Ord Marathoner. That's O-R-D Marathoner. Follow me there. I'll follow you back. Or you can go over to our discussion group on Facebook. Got over 600 people there, like 634 or something, I think, at last check. Really a great group of people. A lot of people over there posting their runs, their workouts, this racing season, marathon season. I got to shout out a lot of congratulations. We just had New York City Marathon. Glenn Eisenstein, we had in the program a couple of weeks ago, and what a great job he did finishing. Martinez Evans was another one we had on the show. He finished as well. Jeremy Farrington, Brooke Farrington, Keith Jones, Aaron Shepard. I'm trying to think of all the people I was following. I know I'm missing some. Georgios Zavolis. He finished in under 4 hours. He didn't hit his goal time, so he's a little upset. But man, under 4 hours, I give you a pat on the back. I don't care. That's fast, man. Good job. Good work. I know I probably missed some people here. I apologize if I didn't say congratulations. Jennifer Voss. She finished the Indianapolis marathon. I was going to say 500, but that's a different race. Indianapolis marathon. I think she ran it as a pacer. I think she was the 5.5 hour pacer. Good job, Jen. I think she was, about a minute early on that? Got to work on that. We need you to be exactly accurate. I don't know. We got to talk about this. We got to talk about why someone would be a pacer. I know you get to run free, and that's a bonus, but it's like, maybe it's just a goal. I don't know. There's something about it. Look, I give it to you guys for doing it. I think it's a great tool for these races when you have a goal to reach, And maybe that's part of it too, is you get to be amongst people who have a certain goal, and you get to try to help them attain that goal. So you know what? I get it. I get being a pacer. I've come full circle. I've just talked myself into it. It's a wonderful thing, though. Good stuff. Good stuff. I want to shout out to our two sponsors that I've changed the format of the show a little bit the last couple weeks. I just gone through, instead of taking a break midway and doing those two ads that I've been doing for almost a year now, for Greasy Girl Headbands. That's GREECIE, girlheadbands.com. And also for raceadvisors.com. So two great people, two great companies that have supported me in the past. We're trying to figure out the most sort of advantageous way to run the show where, we can do something for you guys, like the shout out just now, and I guess not in an advantageous way for everyone, for the listeners, for us, for you. I don't know. I just felt like we were burying your spots in the middle of the podcast, and I think we're going to go a little bit differently going in the future. We're just trying to figure out. Stephanie and I are talking about it. We'll have some new things coming in the new year, and with that, we've been working on the Ordinary Marathon for next year. Again, that's the 10-day virtual race that we did last year. That was just amazing. We raised $700 for American Cancer Society. We had 72 participants. Actually 70 participants, sorry. this year we're gunning for 100, and the charity we've chosen is the Sam Fund, which is Glenn Eisenstein's daughter's charity. They raise money for young adults who are dealing with financial issues related to cancer diagnosis. It's a really good charity, really personal to us, especially if you hang out on the message board and you see Glenn's posts and his training for the marathon and his finishing the marathon this past week. So, I think it's a really personal charity for most of us who are involved in the discussion group. And, it's good to know, for certain that your money is going to a good cause. Not that we didn't know last year. American Cancer Society is a great cause, a cause that I've worked with for years. We just wanted to make it a little bit more personal this year. And I'll be doing some other things for American Cancer Society as well. We'll have Ramon Burmo on the podcast in a few months as well. Talk to him about this, and we'll be bringing him on as well. So, geez, long intro today, but we're going to bring in our guest right now. She is fresh off her victory at the Javelina Jundred. Jen Bergstrom, welcome back to the program. How you doing?
It's like long time no speak to.
It's been a long time. It's been a while. I think.
It has, but yeah.
I think the last time you were on the podcast was the group podcast we did with the Ascension Multisport athletes.
Yes, which Matt wants to do another one.
Yeah, Matt's banging down the door. He wants to come back.
Matt wants his own time.
Right. He wants the spotlight.
He wants the spotlight. When he does a 100-mile foot race, then.
Yeah,
then
exactly. Exactly. He's got to step up his game a little bit. No more riding in the dirt. Yeah, that doesn't get you on the podcast.
100-mile gravel riding.
So, all right. So let's rewind a little bit. We were back in March. Now, I know you have been training for this race, though, even before March. You had your, I know you had your sights. I remember when we were swimming, this was like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. You had your sights on ultra races. And I know you were, I think you did a 50. I know you did something what was the progression until you decided that you were ready for a 100 miler?
So it actually started, the reason I ended up in ultra racing is I wanted to take a break from triathlon, from Ironmans. And because the training, as you know now, is very all-consuming in trying to get in 3 sports. And I also like to backpack and hike, and I dabbled in some trail running before, and I really just enjoyed it. So it just seemed like a natural progression, being a endurance athlete, to maybe try ultra running. And I had all these ultra running friends, including my friend Mindy Randall and Colleen Smith, and Lori Mitchener, who are all kind of really close friends and kind of idols of mine with that. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to dabble in this. I got brought over to the dark side, so to speak. So yes, 2 years ago, I started to take a break. John and I both decided to take a break from triathlon. John's my husband, for people who don't know out there.
I love how you say you wanted to take a break from endurance sports, so you're only going to run ultra marathons.
Ironman, no.
From Ironman, I know. Sorry, that's what I
meant. Not from endurance sports. I just didn't need.
You know what I mean.
In 3 sports, I needed a change. So I decided last year I would train for a 50 miler. The one I ended up training for ultimately ended up being loops of 15. So I was going for 60 miles and ended up with 52 and a half before my Achilles decided to flare up, and I had never experienced that pain. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to keep John while I stubbornly walk this last 7.5 miles just to finish it, when my goal for the year was 50 miles, and I've already been 52 and a half. So I I did that, and
you were already thinking about the 100 at that point.
I was, and I knew that I could make it longer than that. I just needed to figure out how to not get injured in the process or preemptively, prevent things like that, like certain pains. And you're always going to feel pains in this stuff. It's a very, very different sport than triathlon or Ironman.
Yeah.
Saying any less badass, but it is also very, very, very different than road running.
Right. We've talked about that before.
Yes. But anybody considering it, it's honestly less harsh on the feet and the knees and everything. Well, other than that, it's a lot of side to side, and there's a lot of mountain climbing depending on what race you're doing. If you go to try to do Brazos Bend, which is what Melinda was trying to do, that is the flattest race out there. I can't imagine just going flat for that long a period. It just, I think that would be just as harsh on your body. Although Ghost Train is fairly flat, just not Brazos Bend flat. So having said that, I will return to that next year because we're traveling to Montauban to do the Ironman.
Yeah, you're coming back to Ironman next year.
I can't just for next year. And then I've decided that this will, as I'll probably explain later, I've decided I found my love, and while I love triathlon, I think I love ultra running a little bit more, and I think I found my calling. So this is definitely not the last 100-miler I will ever do. I really just love it. So I built up by doing 250Ks and then that 52.5-miler that I ended up doing at the end of the year last year, and like a whole bunch of other runs, random half marathons and stuff.
And I remember seeing some of your training runs. I remember when we did the Ordinary Marathon, I think you had the longest one-day run. It was like 32 miles or something like that.
Yes.
So you had a number of those runs too that aren't necessarily races, but I mean, you're training. And what was the longest training run you do for a 100-mile race? Okay,
so going into this year, I started, I'll tell you a little bit about the training and really, ramping up to it. So we did sign up for Hyannis Half Marathon. John and I both bailed, unlike Laura, but we both didn't see a reason to go drive down to the Cape and run in that nasty cold rain, which Hyannis Marathon was actually the full marathon was my first marathon ever. And it was in freezing cold rain. So and it was even colder than it was this, this past February. And I just had no desire to, there was no reason.
What a crazy race to do a race in Hyannis in February.
So then I started the year off with, she did run the Black Cat, 10-miler, and so did my husband and I, and I did the 20-miler, and I think Sarah, Nick's wife, ran the 20-miler as well this year. Yeah. And then we all went out for Mexican and stuff. But I had a slight mishap, and if I don't bring this up, I won't live this down. I did make a wrong turn on that course and ended up cutting it at 18 something and not realizing why until after. And I ended up emailing the race director, and they didn't change the time or anything. They were like, it's not a qualifier. And I was intentionally running it at like 12-minute miles, intentionally slow, trying to gear up for ultra running.
Right. Which is what you do, right? I mean,
which is reasonably fast, but I was trying to get a feel for that. So I was in the back of the pack for that. So it wasn't like anybody was going to argue that I intentionally cut the course, especially right at the end of it. And I was just like, okay, you know what, whatever, this doesn't matter. And we didn't. Later, I looked at the GPS. I'm like, yeah, I followed that girl, and I played lemming, and that was my bad, and cut the course by accident. But anyhow, so that was the start of my season. Luckily, the season got better from there. I then had Manchester to Monadnock, 55 miler. You run 47 miles to the Pompelli trailhead at the base of Mount Monadnock, and then you climb up and over Mount Monadnock, and it ends at the other end.
I remember the pictures of that one, yeah.
And if anybody has ever, if you live in New England, has hiked Mount Monadnock, well, it's not as strenuous as it was climbing Mount Washington or as high as those. It's still a pretty tough climb, and it had rained, and it was all fogged in by the time we got up. And then we were just like, John ended up pacing us up and over, and I met this girl, Charlotte, that I ended up running the entire race with, and part of the race with Diane, who dropped out, who we would later run Vermont 100K, a majority of it together as well. But
it's funny because you mentioned, and I know maybe we'll get into this a little bit later, but I already sense it already. Like you have all these. It's like this is your crew, this is your people. You found your people.
You meet people, and you stay in touch with them, and when you're running that long, or walking, or walking with a purpose, speed hiking, and running and all that, which is basically what it is. And they're ultra runners are big fans of the Galloway method. I will tell you that.
Yep. That got it. I mean, you kind of have to be.
Have to. So you got to pace yourself. And honestly, what we're fine to tell you are overall times, but the paces, we stopped telling people paces because it doesn't really matter. It varies from race to race. A lot of us are a lot faster on the roads, and those that are really good can still keep, 7-8 minute miles out on there. And I have no idea, but they're elite runners and whatnot. Or there are some people that can keep 10-minute paces on some of this stuff pretty close to throughout, except walking hills, and they're just decent at it. And I hope to get there at some point,
So let's start angling over towards your race in particular, the Javelina 100. So I know you mentioned earlier about the Brazos Bend and how they were flat races. Are there a lot of hills at the Javelina, or is it mostly flat there?
Okay, so most ultra runners, and there's a criticism because Javelina is a looped course instead of a point-to-point.
Yep.
And it is, for a 100-miler, it is a fairly flat course. It's 7,900 feet of gain over 100 miles. Whereas Vermont 100K was, the 100K I did earlier in the year was 10,000 feet of gain over 62 miles.
Right.
So,
and when you talk about before, when you were talking about pace, I mean, you could, from the difference there, I mean, the difference between a flat race to 7,000 to 10,000, I mean, you could throw pace out the window at that point.
Flat, and flat is going to, there's more pounding and more, it doesn't mean that there aren't routes. It doesn't mean that,
there's challenges.
There's other challenges. But the thing is about Javelina, that there's a very high DNF rate at Javelina because it's exposed desert. So leading up to the race, there was, I was looking at the weather. I'm like, whoa, it looks like it's going to be, 79 and, 78, 79 and, on race day. I'm like, perfect. That's the best. I mean, yes, that's hot for running.
A little hot, but it's...
But it
could be worse.
Yeah, but for Arizona, for the Phoenix area, I'm thinking, well, this is best case scenario. Well, the week before the race, the temperatures keep going up, climbing into the 80s, and finally race day it hits, and it's in the 90s.
Bad luck.
Well, and people laughed because everybody said Javelina is notorious for race day. It'll be nice and cool in the area, and then come race day, it's always in the 90s, and some years it's gotten over 100.
Oh, man.
So
yeah, that's leading to a higher DNF rate, I would assume.
So I believe 192, 193 people of the 500 that started the 100-mile race, not the 100K, but the 100-mile race, DNF'd.
Wow. So,
yeah.
you know, and I remember seeing like a video promo about this race a while back, probably when you mentioned that you might want to run it. And just I remember sort of like the setup that they have. You know, can you describe sort of when you get there, right, you're cross country, and now here you are in the middle of the desert, and now you got to do 25-mile loops. Now, isn't there there's like a tent city, and there's describe the environment, I guess, for me. Don't you like sleep there the night before? I don't know. I feel like there's like a whole lot of little nuances to this race.
There's an entire tent city, yes. So basically we were vacationing and going all around, staying with a friend in Sedona.
Sedona's nice. I was there last year, yeah.
I did go on a Pink Jeep tour. I was told we would regret not going on one, so we did, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We went to Grand Canyon. We did like a whole lot of fun stuff. And then my friend that we were staying with, who actually used to work in Burlington, Mass, and she lived out this way, and her husband's from Massachusetts originally. That's how she ended up here. Had moved out to Sedona. So we were staying with them for 4 nights, running some of the trails out there. And then, she was running the 100K, and she'll run Javelina 100, I believe, next year, the full 100.
Cool.
So she and I were decided to share a pop-up tent. So I'm leading to full setup. Yeah. It's just with we had a sunshade over it, and there were a lot of that. So there's a area for pop-up tents, and then there's an area for regular tents for camping, and not everybody stayed there. Some people stayed in local hotels in Fountain Hills. But basically we got there in the morning at about, I think we came in from Tucson, where we were staying, and got there around 9 in the morning. And Robin, my friend, hadn't gotten in yet with her family. She has 2 teenagers. Yeah. I think one of them's like 9 and one's like preteen, whatever. But, so she's got 2 girls, and her husband, were all coming in to support her, and they were staying in a camper. So there's a section there for that too. Yep. If people bring campers, out in the parking lot. But, so we set up our tent, and then we found out, I texted her, and she's not going to be there for a while. So then we're looking around for a place to put in the pop-up tent area, and it's almost all taken because it opened at 7 in the morning, and there's absolutely no spot for a pop-up tent. So I went to one of the race officials and I said, can people start setting up in the actual, camping tent zone on the edge, for pop-up tents? Because I have a feeling we're not the only ones looking for, a spot. Yep. It's this early in the day, and our crew cannot fry, waiting for us in the desert sun waiting. Right. They said, oh yeah, of course. So yeah, go ahead. So we claimed a spot. My friend Kate, who actually was coming in from California driving and racing the 100-miler, texted me, hey, can you put some stuff down and reserve a spot for a pop-up tent for me? I'm like, oh, I don't know how much stuff we can put down, but we can try. And So we did that, and another person had set up a pop-up tent and put some of her stuff down and said, okay, we'll reserve this spot.
Yeah.
This is for your friend Kate. And Robin got in, and we set up the pop-up tent, and there's actually pictures of John sitting in a chair, like frying in the desert. And he's like, you stay in the shade. You're not going to fry. Like, and there was like no shade.
There's no, yeah.
It's like even the half of the people's pop-up tents were like not providing shade unless they were like tilted or whatever.
So you're there for like a full day before the race? Is that the
yeah, because we had to set up. So then the packet check-in and expo is a half hour away.
Okay.
So we're waiting for Robin to get there to set up the pop-up tent. And then as soon as she got there, we John and her set up the pop-up tent. And then we head over to the expo. And
how many runners are in this race now?
800, I believe, total between both races, the 100K and the 100 miler.
So how big is the expo? It's kind of like a mid-size?
It's not big at all, but there's Katra Corbett, she's a sponsored runner. She's not like a crazy fast winning races all the time, but she has won races by virtue of how many she's done, depending on the size of it. And she's not slow. Yeah. But she just got, she was doing a book signing there.
Yep.
And there were some pros there, also doing other signings and whatnot. And then there was like the main area you check in. There's a few vendors and they're selling tons of merchandise and stuff. And it's all outside under this big tent. It's not like an indoor venue. It's like by a ranch. I think it was a ranch or something under a tent. And then there was like a pizza place that was a big sponsor that was doing pizzas. So we both got pizzas, and they had one with vegan cheese. And they just added meat on mine because, as you know, I'm allergic to dairy. So it was actually wonderful that they had Daya for.
Right. So, all right. So now you're checked in, you got the tent set up. So I'm assuming you just kind of like, I mean, did you sleep well the night before? I mean, this thing starts early, I'm assuming.
The next thing we did is we drove back, and we were waiting to hear from my aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
Because, my Aunt Jan and Uncle Jim were I've told you, they're endurance athletes as well. In their 60s, they were coming in from Wisconsin, driving to support me.
Wow, that's a drive.
Well, they also were visiting. So Jim's sister lives in Arizona. So they got a chance to visit them and then go backpacking a little around Zion, and they got permits to do that. So they made a trip out of it, and they're retired, so it was fine. And they were super proud and think I'm nuts, even though they're endurance athletes. So they got there. And then Kate got there shortly after, and, I said hi to her, and then, Jan and Jim set up their tent next to ours, and we had staked out an area for their, camping tent.
So you kept that area? That was, they worked out?
Yeah, and then, that was for the camping tent, and so the pop-up tent worked out as well.
Yeah, good.
And then Jan, Jim, John, and I, the J crew, as I amused John, I wrote in my race report, the J crew. He started laughing.
I saw that, yeah. I read it.
He didn't even realize. So the four of us went out to Mexican. There's lots of really good Mexican in Arizona.
Yeah.
And had these ginormous margaritas. And
the day before the race, you went giant margarita.
Yeah,
right.
Why not?
There you go.
And I had fajitas, and we had like a squawk dip with chips and stuff that we all shared. It was good. And then we went back and pretty much crawled into our tents, and quiet hours are at 8. And we pretty much decided to, try to hit the hay.
Yeah. Smart.
I was, and we were setting the iPhone alarm for 4 a.m. so that I could eat a little. And we went to the grocery store and I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm getting Pop-Tarts.
You burn those calories off.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like the best option. And I got like a little cold brew thing. So I had a little caffeine for the morning. So I had Pop-Tarts and cold brew for breakfast without even leaving the tent. And we had, when we got everything together, like my, hydration vest and everything that I would need for the first loop, together. And I had decided I wasn't going to utilize any drop bags because, and for those of you who don't ultra run, drop bags are kind of like the special needs bags at Ironman. It's just, you can have them at certain areas and you might hit them again if it's a loop course or whatever. And it's just whatever you might need later in the race. I probably should have put a sweatshirt or something for Jackass Junction. It's the second aid station, and it's there are 4 aid stations, including headquarters spelled with a J.
Right. I actually, when I was tracking you, that's Jackass Junction was one of the spots where you must have crossed a mat or timing mat, or is an aid station. So yeah, so it was neat because like it would show you going out and then coming back and then going, you could tell. So
and it's the race is washing machine style, so it means you go one way. Actually, the first loop is 23 miles. Right, the first loop is 23 miles, and the remaining 4 loops are 19.45. So, or it was 22 point something, close to 23 miles, and then and it adds up to about 100 miles.
Yeah. So like the first loop you go clockwise, and the second loop you go counterclockwise. Yes. It's like that's what you mean washing machine.
Basically, I had to do a little walkthrough at headquarters because you want to make sure there. It does say loop 1, loop 2 pointing each direction, but you have to go over the timing mat first. Yeah. Then, depending on what direction, you might hit the aid station before going out, and then hit your crew tent after. Gotcha. So, but some of those really long, after hitting the timing mat, the really long miles that I ended up having were because I was waiting at headquarters for the most part for, my aunt was re-KT tape. Well, she used rock tape on preemptively on my left heel, which had been like just sore and weird, and actually I think that proved to be a good move to do that ahead of time. Yeah, so she had done that actually before the beginning of the race and everything, but she was doing that, and I'll get into it later. One of the aid stations that I hit, I mean, like one of the mistakes that I think I made, but anyhow.
So what time did the race begin? You said you got up at 4. So how many hours did you give yourself?
You have 30 hours.
No, how many hours did you give when you woke up at 4 and you started eating? Then
6 in the morning.
6 and did they do like corrals or different? Not corrals, but like different.
We did actually waves.
Waves.
So technically I had till 12:10 because I started at 6:10. It was self-seated. So anybody who thinks they're going to be 24 hours and under was in the first wave.
Right.
And anybody who was going to be 24 to 30 hours is in the second wave.
Yep.
So I just seated myself in I even thinking that I was going to be 24 to 27 hours, which I had every reason to. And I think I could have been, depending on how things went. But the thing is that desert heat is unrelenting. And I knew that. And so Coach Nick told me to go conservative, but not too conservative on the first loop.
Right. And that's a distance, 20 miles is a distance that you're very comfortable with at this point.
Right. I mean, the most I did in training besides the races and was 35 followed by a 20-mile day. So I would do back-to-backs.
Yep, right.
Very, very common. Getting used to running on tired legs, getting used to running in the dark.
Yeah, I know.
I went out to the bike path in Arlington, Lexington, Bedford, the Minuteman bike path, and ran there because it was better than being on the trails in the middle of the night if I didn't have anybody to go with.
I rode that path in the past. I've been out there.
Yeah,
it's nice. It's nice.
Yeah. So, but it is kind of creepy by yourself at night.
Now, was it dark at 6 a.m. out there or no?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So you started with the headlamp?
I did, and within 45 minutes, the sun comes up. So we did get to see a couple sunrises and one sunset.
Now, did you keep the headlamp on the whole time, or did you like ditch it the second loop?
I ditched it as soon as. So I had a headlamp, and I also had my UltraSpire Lumen 600, which is a waist belt, which is very, very bright. And I like it better than having it on. And I also had chargers with me, portable chargers.
Yep.
So if I needed to recharge things, I did recharge my waist belt. And while I was recharging it in the middle of the night, I just switched to my Black Diamond headlamp. And then switched back.
Yeah, this is all kinds of things that ultra runners have to deal with, but marathoners don't.
Well, and I also charged my watch.
Yeah.
The good thing about the 935 is
Garmin?
that you can just take it off your wrist, plug it in, stuff it in your vest, so you're not getting optical heart rate anymore. But it's the same thing with the Phoenix 5. It's pretty much the same watch. It's just the case is plastic in the 935 so it's the same watch.
But there's like a portable charger for that? I didn't even know.
You just use a regular charger, and you can buy,
really?
sell portable chargers like you use for camping and everything.
Ah, gotcha.
So,
and it's not heavy to carry around?
No, it's just stuff it in the pocket of my vest. So yeah, and like if I need a jacket or something, stuff it in the back of my vest or something if I need to strip a layer or something. So yes, I have to stop, take off my vest, take off my jacket, and then stuff it in and put it back on. So that's going to take time. But in a race like that, comfort is everything, and not getting hypothermic or overheating is everything. So you want to take the time to do that. So
all right. So we know you got started in the dark. You had the belt and the headlamp. And when was there ever a moment when did it start like becoming difficult? It had to, I mean, at some point it had to be like, all right, you're in a zone, you're past, say, 30, 35 miles, and you start being in a zone where you haven't been before. You've trained, but, like you said, I know you've trained back-to-back days, but you've never run beyond, you've done, I guess, ultras before. I've done 100K. So when did it start? Did you ever hit, there had to be a spot where it started becoming sort of challenging.
You're talking about, the wall inside the marathon and things like that?
Yeah, did you ever hit that kind of thing, or?
Oh, yeah, ultra running plays mind games on you. The one thing I will say is that the further distance you're running, the longer that wall holds out. Yeah. So I was feeling good pretty much through the 100K point. However, I will say that I knew by the time I finished the first 22, 23 miles, that first loop, that second loop, I knew was going to be brutal because that was going to be during the high heat of the day. Everybody said that they planned on walking as much as possible as of that. Although I had through probably mile 70, 75 people saying to me, how did you, so we're in the middle of the night. You're looking absolutely like volunteers and ultra runners themselves saying you look like you're moving really well and everything. And it's more, the biggest thing I had a problem with is at a certain point, my feet from hitting that packed sand, and there's a whole couple mile, I don't know if it was a mile or 2 miles of like rockiness. It was like a mile or 2 miles of hell. And you either go up or you go down it, depending on which direction you're going, but it's inevitably there. And I'm just hoping for the softer, sand. And then there's also these, I forget what they call them, but kind of where flooding goes through when it does rain, and they're kind of washes and they kind of drift over and under. It's just like you have to run down into them and up them, and they're really sandy areas.
Like a gully, or like a...
Yeah, kind of. It's out in the middle of the desert.
Yeah,
so
it's different.
There's a specific term that I just forget. So there's a lot of that terrain, and then there's a lot of washes going through. So all of a sudden it would kind of bank and you go off to one side because it was like these massive little holes in the, in the path, just along, where the washouts and everything. There were not a lot of roots, not a lot of rocks in a lot of areas, but there were, that's me. Sorry.
I thought it was
my
me.
husband texting.
That's okay. So it sounds like to me, like in the middle of the day, the terrain is passable, not too much of a concern. I'm sure it's a little more concern than it is if you were road running. But at night, is it just something you have to be really extra cautious about?
The terrain?
Like the terrain?
I didn't have any problems. I think I had one mishap where I didn't go over completely, but I stumbled over myself and caught myself.
Yeah.
But it was not really that bad. As this course isn't really technical, but like I said, the exposure and everything is kind of crazy. So I got out to it. So that wasn't a big problem. The biggest problem that you also have is you're running in 90-degree temperatures. It gets to night. And then the temperature drops. And it drops. It got down to, it's not that it was cold, but it's also very dry there. Yeah. It got down to about 50.
Your pace isn't, it's not like you're not running a 9-minute pace you're running like a 12, 13-minute pace, which is probably have a lot of walking. So you're susceptible. And plus you just spend all day in the 90-degree weather.
12, 13 when you're running, but you're walking up hills and everything. And in the middle of the night, you might be doing a lot of walking, even not up hills, so that you don't kill yourself.
Yeah, so it gets cold. And like you said, you wish you would have had like a sweatshirt.
So one of the wonderful volunteers at Jackass Junction, I went over and I said to him, because I was running with I think I was running with this guy, Bruce, at the time. Really interesting, fascinating guy. And I turned to him and I said, I'm getting like really cold. We're approaching, we were on the, maybe mile 50 something, like, like before the turnaround to come back for finishing the 100K, or I think it was around then. And I just reached out and I said, look, I am getting really cold. I had a long sleeve on at this point, but I had asked John and the rest of my crew to, like at headquarters before I went out, I said, I don't need, I don't know what I said. I think I said to him, because I found my hat in there, but in my long sleeve, but like in the back of my pack, but my jacket wasn't there. I could have sworn I said, please put my jacket in there. But I reached in, I turned to Bruce. I said, can you see if my jacket's in the back there? So we stopped for a moment. This is before we got to the aid station. And he's like, no, there's a hat. You need a hat? I'm like, yeah, what the fuck do I need a hat for in the middle of the night? Stupid freaking crew. I'm like, we're just both laughing about it. I said, I can make it to the aid station. And hopefully someone will have something, a throwaway or something there. So I asked one of the lead volunteers there, and he said, actually, hold on. One of the other volunteers said they brought extra things. He's like, a sweatshirt okay? I said, yeah. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I just want something. So he's like, it's yours. Like, just, they brought extra to throw away.
Lucky.
I said, because they said inevitably we knew somebody was going to get cold. I said, thank you. You pretty much saved my race, because I could have ended up hypothermic otherwise.
Right.
Your body temperature from so much exertion just gets so freezing, just as when you stop running a marathon or something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
If
it's worse. Yeah, I mean, 50 feels like 30.
Exactly. So I was freezing, and there's no sunlight on you. And I'm like, inevitably it's going to also get back in the 90s by the time I finish this thing. But, I'm not thinking that far ahead for now. I just need to stay warm. So I put that on and, catch up to Bruce again. And we run. He was running the 100K. So ran him in. I said, you go get it, and I'm running to we ran to the end there, and then he ran into the finish, and I looped back around to my crew tent. And
so when you're out there, now, I mean, I know you're very personable. You're going to make a lot of friends. You're probably going to find people to run with. But is it like, so I've run a few marathons where I find myself all alone on the road, and there's like no one in front, no one behind. I don't, you're just kind of out there, right? And you just hope the course is marked right. Is it like that when you're out there, or is there plenty of people kind of, along the way, or you find moments when you're by yourself?
So it's actually interesting because this is a loop course. So you will constantly see people going one way or the other.
Right.
As a day goes on or night goes on, and like 100Kers are finishing or whatever, and people are finishing up loops, yes, there's less and less people coming until people are passing you. But constantly through the middle of the night, they also had Jackass Midnight Run, which wasn't that big, but it was like one loop out to Jackass Junction and then back to headquarters. So we had more people out there. It was like 800 between the 100K and 100 miler, but plus maybe an extra 25 or 50.
I
people.
I don't know if that's good or bad. It's like on the one hand, yeah, it's like, all right, it's kind of neat to see other people, at least see other people on the course. But on the other hand, it's like you've already run probably like 50, 60 miles at that point, and these people are out there doing like they're fresh.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. It was just nice to have friendly faces, and they have different bibs than the rest of us, so you can tell who the 100K and who the 100-miler, etc. So it was actually nice. What is the thoughts that go through your head, and when people are coming the other direction and you're later in the race, is, oh damn it, they're in their fourth loop and you're still in your third.
Right.
Know at a certain point that they have to be in that loop because it's now getting down to the wire, and you're it's like, fuck you. I want to be. It's more, I want to be you. The constant, you're doing great, which is often in endurance sports, but people genuinely mean it. It's like, everybody's on auto mode at that point. It's like, good job. You're doing great. But it's like, I feel like it's more genuine than Ironman or road running. It doesn't sound as condescending as it does in road running.
I could see that.
Because we're all doing the same thing and we're all walking at different points. So
it's kind of interesting because there is, even the last marathon I did, I remember like the last few miles, it was, I'm going as fast as I can, and it might not be very fast, but this is as hard as my body can go. And so I can't imagine being at like mile 80 of one of these things where, it's like everyone's in that same mode, like you said. And then, I certainly, when I was at Ironman and I DNF'd, like people were passing me at the end and they were like, I'll keep it up. And some of them you could tell are really genuine and really they're rooting for you. And some of them, you're right. It's not as, it's not so much less genuine, but, they're focused on their race and there's less camaraderie, I guess.
But the one thing that is so different that I love about ultra running is, like, I ran with Katra Corbett for quite a while. I told you, the one that was doing the book signing,
right?
And everything. She had done Moab 240. She did what is called the Triple Crown, which is the three. It's the 3 200+ mile races.
Uh-huh.
So she had just finished Moab 240.
Ramon Burmo did that. Ramon.
Yep. So, and I'd actually like to do it eventually.
There you go.
And actually my friend Robin, who will do her first 100, like I said, next year, and she did phenomenal. Actually, she was like placed somewhere between 10th and 15th in the 100K.
Right.
So she's doing really well. Anyhow, so Katra said, I don't know, this is going to be like, she just wanted her 10th in a row Javelina jacket, and it's a fun race, and she's super down to earth, and we were talking various different things, like her new watch sponsor, and she said this thing is supposed to last like 24 hours, first time I've worn it, and we were just talking various different things, and I'm telling her that my feet are starting to hurt, and she said to me, actually, next time you need to preemptively wrap them, so that you don't get that, especially on this desert environment, and you won't get those blisters under the calluses.
Ouch, yeah.
Because I thought I had stepped on a jumping cholla, like cactus or something, and that's what the stabbing was through my shoe, because they'll go through straight through my shoe. I had no mishaps with cacti, so or
that's good.
Any desert creatures that matter. So it was just more of, okay, no, they were blisters. So eventually, by the time I was now speed walking with John for that last final lap, I got this, I go out of one of the aid stations and I screech, and he says, what? I said, it feels like knives that just went into my,
Your foot.
the ball of my foot. Like it just in the left side mostly, but like it hurts with every step. I said, I've had this before in terms of like it hurts with every step at Vermont. But I was like, no, it's, so I sat like on a dried out log in the middle of the desert, and I yanked my shoe off and looked at on my left foot. And I said, he looked down, and I said, no, those are blisters, hon. I'm like, yeah, I can see that. So I put the sock and shoe back on, and I said, the thing I learned is, besides preemptively taping, is maybe I should have changed out my socks and shoes at that before we went out on that last loop, because I decided that I didn't want to take the time to do it because I didn't know how long this. It's 4:30 in the morning, and I wanted to maximize my time.
Right. How many times did you change your socks during the day? During the whole race? Is it something that you do often?
Loop.
Every loop?
Yeah, almost every loop. And I threw more trail toes, which is lubing up my feet.
Yeah. It's probably supposed to help with the blisters, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. I made the biggest mistake of, I didn't have blisters like other people. It was not, I just made you can't drain these ones because they're under the calluses. So I just had to, so the first day or two, I was just walking around, and everybody keeps telling me I'm going to lose the calluses, which I probably will. No black toenails or anything. My feet are in pretty good shape. I'm walking around again fine, but it was just more of, I should have pre-wrapped them, and I should have changed out my, I was double socking it and putting trail toes and changing out my shoes every loop. And I didn't for the last one. I just decided to keep going. But maybe I should have changed them.
So I want to sort of take you out of like the sort of the, I don't know, the technical things about this race and all the things that you did and all the things, maybe things you did wrong, things you did right. And I want to kind of focus on this last loop, because your husband, you're allowed to bring a pacer, at least for the last loop, right? Mm-hmm. So, and your husband ran the last loop with you. What was the dynamic between you two at that point? Was he dragging you through the last loop? Was he making light and trying to keep you in a good mood? Or were you dragging him? What was it like, mentally, not so much the technical part?
I was exhausted mentally. I never want, a lot of people hallucinate or almost fall asleep on their feet. I did see a few people out there. I did stop for another lady and say, are you going to be okay? Please don't fall into a cactus. I was really not kidding about that. She's like, no, I'm just really tired. So we'll get yourself to an aid station and get some caffeine in you. I'm like, you need caffeine. It's a real thing in terms of staying up. I was fatigued, but I was not feeling like at any point like I was going to necessarily fall asleep.
Right.
I felt I'll explain where this is going in a sec, but I felt, really, like it's a long night, or you've been doing something for a really long time. You're really, really tired, or you're mentally exhausted too. Yeah. So it's just, I definitely, I tried a half a cup of coffee, immediately followed by Tums, because that gave me acid reflux. But ended up, pounding Mountain Dew at that point, and that worked. Okay. And then I got in for that final loop, and I didn't know how much run there was going to be just because of my feet at that point, and they weren't the stabbing pain. But I literally, I didn't realize at that point it was because of it was because of the blisters. If I hadn't had the blisters, I think I really would have had a little more run walk in me, and I would have been in easily an hour earlier. And because I had to stop with John on that loop to take a look to figure out what was going on, with that, and realizing that I can't run or it's going to be very painful at this point, but I can certainly walk fast. So we're walking, 16, 17-minute miles at that point, and just I'm able to do that. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I got out on that loop, and I immediately said to him while we were out there, well, the first thing I said to him is, I said, talk to me, John. I just need you to keep me going.
Busy and keep you, right.
Yes, and
pass
keep
the
my
time
mind off pain or anything like that. I said, talk to me. So he tried, and other people were saying, oh, your pacer should stay behind you, not ahead of you. And I'm like, can you just try to stay behind me instead of, so that you're going my pace instead of, ultimately we ended up either next to each other or he ended up ahead of me anyhow, trying to pull me. But we got out there, and I said, I thought I would be a complete bitch at this point, but he's like, you're totally the opposite. I said, no, I'm just tired, but I am so happy to have you out here with me. It's so comforting. He's like, I can tell you're just happy to. I said, I didn't have a pacer for the third loop. I could have, because it's after dark or 5 or 6 o'clock. Right. 5 o'clock was the race rules were. So I could have had a pacer for the last 3 loops. My other pacer that I was going to have for miles 60 to 80, she did 100-miler cloud splitter with 27,000 feet of gain and ended up tearing a ligament. So I told her, don't come, please, don't come. She can't walk right now. Actually, I think she's finally walking, but so I didn't have a pacer at that point. So I had to just have it on my own and find people to run with, which wasn't a problem. We fell into the same pace as, with Ironman with other people, and they pull you along. And then I was super happy to have, but they're racing their race and I'm racing mine. So if you pull off, you pull off, or they pull off, they pull off. And then, having John there for me was really, really nice for that last 19 to 20 miles.
Did you ever have a question in your mind that you might not finish, or it sounds like you were pretty confident the whole way?
At that point, John assured me that, and everybody said, what, you have this. It's like, I had various things I can't stop. I said to John, make sure we push through the aid stations at this point. I said, I don't need a lot, from them. I make sure I'm eating. I'm having to pee 5 million times out in the middle of the desert now. And that's taking a lot of time because you just have to just go and, it's just it will end. You
gotta watch out for the cactus during that when you're doing that.
There's enough space between them that it's really not a big deal. And there's a bunch of bushes that are fine. You just don't want to pop a squat on a tarantula or something, or a rattlesnake.
Right.
But they generally weren't a problem. So I just said that I would have, I would have to go to the bathroom a lot. Especially it was more around the 100, just before the 100K point, my body started to break down to do that, which means I was like, well, at least I'm hydrated. It means I'm drinking, but I'm probably over drinking, and it's hard to find that fine line.
Sure.
But it's better than being dehydrated. And I just didn't want hyponatremia either, but it was just sort of like, okay, like a lot of people were experiencing that. And
with the temperature, I'm sure it makit more difficult.
And I was making sure I was taking all my salts, right, and eating, and that gets harder and harder. I think I stuck down on that loop with Bruce.
Bless you.
I stuck down half a hamburger without a bun because I just couldn't handle the bun at that point. And some Mountain Dew and some ramen noodles, but it's like I couldn't eat all the carbs.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know what your stomach can really handle, and you can't plan for it. But then when you're out there, you find yourself,
what you want.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're like, yeah. I just remember doing Ironman and being like, wow, grapes! They had grapes, and I'm like, wow, these are really good, and I would have never trained.
I ate a lot of watermelon though.
That sounds like a good one.
Yeah, no, it is, and dipped in salt and everything.
Oh wow!
It just looked. I mean, they had at one point in the middle of the night they had beer and Fireball and everything and other stuff lined up. But I was just like, I don't need to dehydrate myself.
I was going to say that sounds a little dangerous.
Yeah, so having said that, I did have a margarita at Vermont 100K, but it was it depends on how you're feeling and the temperatures and everything like that.
So let me ask you this, because we do have to kind of wrap this up. It's we're kind of extended here, but when you cross the finish line, so did John cross the finish line with you?
So he was trying to stay out of it, but he thinks he might have photobombed my finisher photo because he was taking a video from behind me.
Okay.
So you saw the video.
How did it feel? Now, compared to your first marathon or your first Ironman, how did it feel? Was it a different kind of finishing feel, or was it?
It was relief, very satisfying, and I knew that this was what I want to do, and this was not. I knew from the get-go this was not a bucket list thing for me. That this is what I should do. And so, on the other hand, and this is not saying anything bad, or that, and it's not saying that Ironmans are not difficult, because they are really difficult.
And you'll be doing some next year. You'll be doing one.
Running 100 miles is by far the most difficult thing I have ever done. Yeah. And I will tell you that. And I'm not saying anything is any less badass than other. So I don't hate me, Ironman community, for saying that. But I'm saying
for you, it's your own experience.
I'm also not saying that when I go to race Mont Trabant that it's going to be easy. I got to get my butt reacclimated to the bike, and I got to get my bike up and everything. But and I think I can do really well once I got to do a lot of brick workouts. Damn it! But but to me personally, I think the challenge of running 100 miles was personally rewarding, but tougher than anything that I've ever done, and I want to do more. And having said that, I have gone into the Western States Lotto.
I love that.
The chances of me, finishing that race at the end of June, if I did get in, are slim to none, but I would certainly give it.
You have a chance to finish that race. It's not zero.
It's a really difficult race.
It's all, I've seen it, and I read Dean Carnaz's book that
attempts plus the going through the mountains and the elevation. It's that race is
It's a monster.
Pretty much the championships of it's the Kona or Boston of ultra running. It's the original one. It's no joke. So would I like to get in next year? Probably not next year, but I had to put my name in for good measure, since I did actually get a qualifier, which allows me a ticket in the lotto. Would I like to run it eventually? Yes. if I do get in, which is the chances are 99.99% that I'm going to be racing another Ironman next year and not Western States. If I do get in, I will defer Mont Tremblant to 2020.
Yeah.
And I will go and rah everybody, but I will race Western States. But most likely I will be racing Mont Tremblant and Mont Tremblant 70.3 next year, and then returning to ultra running.
And I think, we spoke about this a little bit the other day before I got you on, but it seems to me, and I'm really happy. Well, number one, I'm like super proud of you and super happy that you accomplished this, because I know that it wasn't always bells and whistles, the training. It's difficult training, and you went through it. And I remember just seeing you knock off these 30+ mile runs and going, wow, she's really going after it. And, and you did it and you finished. And, I think that's incredible. This has been like a really incredible week for like all the people on our page, and, and really just an incredible accomplishment, Jen. Just like,
Katie got her sub 6.
Yeah. It's just, it's been great. Glenn finished, and a whole bunch of people finished New York the other day. It's just, man, just watching it, I'm so jealous because I guess I ran it like 3 weeks ago, and I did all right. So,
So, do you want to race 100-miler?
I don't know. You know what it is? I think
don't make it a bucket list. That actually, you know what? If you want to get into ultra running and find you like it, I wouldn't say delve into it like an Ironman. You can't do it in the same year. I mean, you can. Some people do, but if you saw how much training I put in, and it's just as much as Ironman. It's just all running. And you got a new baby on the way.
I know.
Consider a 50-miler, which is a completely different race.
I do like the idea. We talked about like they have races that are like 24 hours or 12 hours even. That I could do something like that.
Come and run the Ghost Train with me next year. Your kid will be almost a year. Ordinary marathoner.
Ordinary baby. Yeah, she's
ordinary baby.
Well, listen, if we keep the podcast going on too long, she's gonna be born, and then we're gonna still be chatting. But listen, thank you so much for coming. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. It's such an amazing goal. I don't know if it's in it for me. I think for me, much like you said, you kind of found your people with the trail running and the ultra running. After DNFing in Lake Placid, I like being on the bike. Even though I suck at it, for some reason, I like training on it. I feel like it's better for me. Like when I run all the time, my legs they just tire out and they just get destroyed. And I think part of that might be weight related or whatnot, but I don't want to get too far into that. But I really like training on the bike, and I think for me for next year that's my thing. So I think it's good for both of us. I think you've kind of found your niche here, and maybe I found mine. So
hey, maybe you'll come ride the CRW Spring Century with us. It's like $25, and it's local to here.
Yeah,
but it's Charles River Wheelman. Should check it out. We'll do it as a lead up to Mont Tremblant.
Yeah.
So 100-miler. So
yeah. So that's when
ride to
is
clarify.
That in the spring?
Yeah. Spring Century in the spring. Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, Jen, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate all your time, and congratulations once again.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we're gonna cut it. We're gonna cut it there. We're gonna be back again next week. This is how great of a host I am that I forgot the name of the guy who I'm interviewing next week. He's an author, actually. He's you know what? I'm gonna have to post something about this guy. Peter Segal, I think. He's actually a host on NPR, and he's going to be with us. He wrote a book about running, and I'm going to interview him next week. Anyway, with that, always remember, when it comes to running, I'm no expert. I'm just ordinary.